It is a great pleasure to welcome, for the third time this weekend, my friend and the star of PBS's Dinosaur Train, Scott Sampson.
Thank you. I love nature centers. Since I was that tall, I was one of those kids who annoyed the naturalists at nature centers, because we'd go on the nature walks and I'd always be right up there at the very front tugging on the naturalist coat and asking them 1,000 questions. One of those kids you just kind of, after a while, you go, get out of here, kid. But I had lots of time outdoors and in nature centers, and it's one of the reasons I became a scientist, without question. So it's a thrill for me to come here today. I work at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science in Denver, Colorado, and one of the things that we're talking about is merging with a nature center, or maybe more than one. And so it's great for me to see an example here in New York and think about how we might learn from this example. So before we do anything else, I would like all of you just to take a really deep breath and hold it and then let it out. As a result of that breath, you are now more relaxed. You have a boosted immune system. Your ability to be creative just went up. Your ability to concentrate just went up. And your mental energy just went up. And there's scientific studies that back up all of that, that just being outdoors in a place like this does all those good things for you, which is pretty amazing. So what I want to do in just the next few minutes is talk to you about how you might look at this place differently. When you come to a nature center, chances are you get here and you look around and you go, wow, I can hear the water. Everyone hear the water? If you listen closely, you'll hear birds right here. You'll look around, you'll see amazing trees, and you'll start to identify the things that are here. And that's sort of the way people tend to look at stuff. It's the way that science looks at stuff too, where we look at things separately and then we break them down into their parts. And I'll bet you all you kids at school and all you grown-ups, if you remember way back when, if you think about learning about nature in school, usually it was about the parts. You get a flower and you learn about, okay, these are the petals, and this is the stem, and this is the pistil and the stamen, and all these things you've tried to forget, right? This is how we learn about nature, but I want you to put on new goggles today. I'm going to try and give you goggles that look at nature not as a bunch of parts, but as a lot of interacting wholes. Okay, you with me on this? I'm going to invite you to really see this place very differently than you might otherwise see it. Because nature doesn't see things in parts. Nature has no understanding of separate parts. Nature only works in interacting wholes. So what I'm inviting you to do is see nature the way it sees itself. Okay? So let's think about this. You come to a place like this. Where is the energy that drives this place? Where does it come from? Who knows? What do you think? The sun, right. So the sun, even though it's sort of out right now, that's pretty good. The sun is driving this place, and what is it that captures the energy of the sun here? It's the plants. All of this green stuff. This blade of grass is capturing, well, it did until I just pulled it from the ground. Capture light from the sun. This blade of grass knows stuff that we don't know. It is way better at grabbing the energy of sunlight than we are. It is an ancient wisdom that goes back billions of years. And this grass grabs the sunlight and helps to feed this place. So all the plants, all the animals that are here depend on the energy that comes from the sun that is grabbed by these plants. Now you have to ask yourself, why are these plants here and not some other plants? Like grass goes back a long time, but it doesn't go back forever. There was no dinosaur that ever saw a blade of grass. Right? So grass is here, these trees are here for a reason. So for example, one of the trees you see around here a lot are maple trees. And this is a sugar maple. And this was once again capturing sunlight until I pulled it off a tree a few minutes ago. And the reason you find sugar maples here and you don't find lots and lots of evergreen trees is that North America is this amazing place where we have tropical summers and Arctic winters, especially right here in New York. And it's shaped, if you think about the shape of North America, it's really wide at the top and it narrows down at the bottom. And some people call it shaped like a trumpet. And to add to that, you've got mountains on the west coast and lower mountains, but still mountains on the east coast, and that funnels all of the cold air from the north, although it shunts it way down south. So that you even get trees like this down as far as, you know, South Carolina and things like that. So these trees are here because they're specialized for hot summers and really cold winters. And what happens to these leaves in the fall? What do?
They turn a different color.
They turn a different color. And what do we call that? We say the trees are losing their leaves, right? That's wrong. Trees don't lose their leaves. Lose, it's like, oops, oh man, I lost my leaf. You know, that's not what trees do. Trees have these leaves and it starts to get cold and the trees go, get out of here, I'm throwing you away. I throw down all their leaves. And they kind of go, why would you do that? That's what's grabbing the energy of the sun, right? Well, it's getting cold and the trees are shutting down. And it turns out that if you're a tree and you have a leaf and you drop your leaves, there's over 90% chance that that leaf will drop close enough to the base of the tree that it will go back into the soil and provide nutrients to help that same tree the next year. So that's an amazing thing. It's grabbing energy from the sun, but because it gets cold, they turn these beautiful colors, they throw down their leaves, and then the next year, those leaves have decayed, they come back in the soil and they feed the tree. Now we're starting to see this tree, this sugar maple tree, not as a tree, but a set of relationships. It's grabbing energy from the sun. It's using the soil underneath to make itself. That's where the matter comes from. So the energy flows through this place and out again, and the matter gets recycled, right, including through these sugar maple trees. Now, if you could see closely here, and some of you down front could see it, there's a hole in this sugar maple leaf. And if you go and pick leaves off, well, don't pick the leaves, just look at the leaves on the tree, you'll see that a large proportion of them have holes in them, and that's because there are leaf-eating insects here. A lot of them. They're herbivorous insects. So these leaves are food for lots and lots and lots of creatures. All the animals here ultimately depend on the energy that comes from all this green stuff. So we have this great collection of insects. And I have one here that Brian was kind enough to bring in. It is a beautiful fly. It's called a Dobson fly. He was telling me that these things fly around at night mostly. A lot of people think that they're moths, but they're these very large flies, and this is a male, and he's got these big pincer-like processes coming off the head. And this thing is in a larval form in the rivers and streams. And I have a lake trout right there on the bench, and the lake trout will love to eat these larvae. And fishermen know this. So fishermen pick the larvae and put them on hooks and stuff like that. So here's one of these insects that's living right here, and some of them are huge. So the insects grab this. The bats will probably eat this Dobson fly. The fish will eat the larvae. So now, these flies are eating sunlight. Imagine that. The plants grab the sunlight, the flies eat the sunlight, the fish eat the sunlight in the form of a fly, the bats eat the sunlight in the form of a fly, right? Meanwhile, that same sugar maple tree makes nuts, right? Well, yeah, the maples and the oaks, the hickories, especially the oak and the hickory, they drop all these nuts on the ground. Now, what's that about? Why would you drop all these nuts on the ground? Does anyone know? Why did they do that? What do you think?
So squirrels and chipmunks eat them.
so other things can eat them. You see, that's a great answer. That's a terrific answer. Most people would say, oh, the trees drop the seeds on the ground because they want to make more trees. And ultimately that may be true, but here the trees drop the seeds for the animals to eat them. Now I'm not just making this up. They think, well, why would you want the trees to eat your seeds? That's bad for the tree. And you go, no, it's not. Because it turns out that this squirrel, you can see it's got a pine cone in its mouth even, it's beautiful, this nice eastern gray squirrel, they love nuts, right? These squirrels go around, if you watch these animals in the fall, a lot of people call these sort of like rats with furry tails, you know, but people don't appreciate squirrels if they call them rats with furry tails. These things every fall are grabbing nuts from the hickory trees and the oak trees and things like that, and they are burying them, right? They're taking them all over the place. They're digging holes in the grass and they're burying those nuts someplace so they can go back and get food in the wintertime. So here's a really cool thing. If you go and look at nuts from places like Australia, like macadamia nuts, or from Brazil, like Brazil nuts, they're really hard and they have thick shells. You got to use a mallet to open them up. Not here. The acorns that fall from these trees are easy to open. And they're easy to open because the trees want the squirrels to pick their nuts and eat them, because those squirrels will go and bury them different places. And the trees are counting on the fact that the squirrels, even though they squirrel stuff away, sort of make mistakes. Every once in a while they'll forget where they buried something, you know. Maybe a car will run the squirrel over or it'll die or something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make. Okay, but I'll take that back. Maybe the squirrel will die of old age, a beautiful old age. And that squirrel, because the tree has dropped its acorn specifically for the squirrel, now the squirrel has done the tree a favor. It has buried this seed beautifully so another tree can grow. Much better than the tree could have done just dropping its seeds on the ground. The squirrel has done the work of the tree. And in fact, over millions of years, the squirrel and the tree have co-evolved. They've evolved together so that the shells are very thin. They're easy for the squirrel to open. They're even shaped right for the squirrel to get them in their mouth, because the trees are competing against each other for the squirrel's attention. Right? It's an amazing thing. They've actually come together. So it's all about these relationships. You see the squirrel as a separate animal and the tree as a separate plant, but from nature's point of view, they're all intertwined. And people are part of this too. When Native Americans arrived here 13,000 years ago and they started to populate North America, one of the first things they started to use was the seeds, these acorns from trees like oak and hickory. And because this is a rich and concentrated food source, it allowed people to develop complex societies away from the coast with lots and lots of people. North America is the only place in the world where you tend to get complex societies away from coastlines, and it's because of those nuts. It's because of those squirrels. The squirrels have allowed all of these nuts to drop. So at certain times of the year, the trees are just dropping these things, these acorns and stuff everywhere. People pick these things up, they turn them into food. So people can thank the squirrels and the trees for doing a lot of work for millions of years to allow this rich food resource to be here, which ultimately led to the peopling of the central regions of certainly the Northeast and much of North America. It's a really interesting way of looking at these things. And of course, wherever you have plant eaters, you have amazing meat eaters. This horned owl is one example. Awesome. And they're just remarkable creatures, right? And they're absolutely deadly. These things, these horned owls, can hear in ways that just blow scientists away. We keep finding out more and more about their abilities, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's something like they can hear the heartbeat of a mouse from 100 feet in the air, or some ridiculous figure like that. And they're able to hear that and swoop down and nail rodents in particular. Squirrels might be a little big, but they definitely go for all kinds of rodents, and they are really effective. They kill lots and lots of rodents every night. So if you don't like mice, owls are your friend. Trust me. So now you've got this owl, and it's made of sunlight too, because it's eaten the mice that have eaten some plants which have grabbed the energy from the sun. So here you have sunlight in the form of an owl. That's how nature sees it. It's all about these flowing relationships, which is an amazing thing. Now, we like to think of ourselves as sort of kind of separate from all this stuff, right? We don't really need nature. It's kind of nice to be out here, but we can go to the grocery store and get our nicely packed vegetables and our shrink wrap meat, and we're sort of all separate from that. Well, that's not true. Food is nature. Everything you eat comes from a living thing that once grabbed, ultimately, is made of sunlight. So you are intimately tied. That breath you took when we started out, you are exchanging air. So if I go and exhale, in a minute you're going to be breathing the same air that I just exhaled, and you're going, oh, that's disgusting. We're all sharing air all the time in this place. We can't help it. We are embedded in this matrix of air that we all share. Now you can still say, okay, I might drink water and have some food, but I'm still separate from everything in the environment, right? I'm still a separate animal, and that's not true either. Turns out that your body is made of 100 trillion cells. Even your little body, 100 trillion cells. 90 trillion of those cells are not human cells. They're bacterial cells and fungal cells. And that's true not just of you, it's true of everybody here. Now that might make you think, gee, I need to go have a long shower now and scrub to get rid of all these things. But you need all these microorganisms. There are more living things on you than there are people on Earth. There are more living things on you than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. You're not a separate person, a separate entity. You are a walking colony. You are. All of us are. And scientists call this their microbiome. It's all the little things that live on their bodies. Each one of us has a unique microbiome. It changes all the time, but it's partly dependent on where you live, where you grew up, who and what you've interacted with. You have 400 different kinds of bacteria in your mouth alone, and you need them. They help shield out things that you don't want in your body. Inside your gut, you have bacteria that help you to digest green stuff that you eat and anything else you eat, and without them, you couldn't survive either. So we are fully dependent on all these microbes that cover our bodies. In fact, there's recent science, and what I've just said wasn't known 20 years ago. It's only in the last 20 years we've begun to understand this, and now it's having implications that go throughout all of science. So for example, in healthcare, cancer researchers have been looking at human genes, trying to figure out which genes trigger cancer. Now there's a group of cancer researchers who are saying, maybe we've been looking in the wrong place. Maybe we shouldn't be looking at human genes, maybe we should be looking at the genes of all the microbes that are covering human bodies. Maybe the answers are there, because those microbes may even help control our moods and stuff. So you think of yourselves as separate, but you're really not. You are completely tied into everything that's going on around us here today. And we call this ecology, and I think of ecology in the grandest sense of everything is connected to everything else. So that's one way that we can look at wholes and interacting wholes, this flow of energy and this cycling of matter. Now I want to take a completely different lens and look at another way that you are connected. And this might seem even more bizarre, but once again, it is backed up by the best science we have, which is pretty darn good, by the way. So I'm going to tell the story of the universe in about 7 minutes. And I'm going to do it right through this place. So this is a chunk of sedimentary rock that's got a bunch of fossils in it. Most of the rock that underlies this place is more than 300 million years old. It goes back to the time period called the Devonian. And as you all know, I mean, it's just amazing. If you're a fossil lover, if you're a paleontologist, one of the reasons that Warren loves to be here is that he's like completely surrounded by fossils. I was at his house last night, and Alex, his daughter, is like out in the backyard yanking fossils up out of the ground. And I'm going, holy cow, where can you go that you just go into your backyard? It's like every kid's dream, right? There are fossils just littering the earth in this place. The soil that comes from these rocks is made of rock on the one part and life on the other. So I want to go all the way back. Once upon a time, almost 14 billion years ago, the universe formed. There were no stars, no planets, no life, nothing that we would recognize at all. Particles, that was it. First things to form were the stars, and there was no heavy elements in the universe, no iron, no carbon, no oxygen, no nothing. It was all hydrogen and helium. Stars form, big, small stars. As those stars go through their life cycles, they produce some of these heavy elements, and then when those stars die, they don't go out with a whimper, especially if they're big. They go out with a bang, and they explode into the universe, and they send out all this heavy stuff, the iron, the oxygen, all these different things that make up the carbon that makes up most of our bodies. Then planets can form, because planets can't form unless there's these heavy elements. The planets form, including Earth. Earth, about 4.5 billion years old, so it's a relative latecomer in the universe. Earth forms, it's made of this stuff that's inside stars. So everything that comes out of those stars can go into making up these planets. And especially rocky planets like Earth have these heavy elements that are in them, like iron in the core of the Earth and things like that. And with planets, you get chemistry. You didn't have chemistry really before that. You get chemistry, all these different elements interacting with each other. And with that, you ultimately get life. And it turns out that life appeared on Earth close to 4 billion years ago. Now, I said Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. First life about 4 billion years ago. Life appeared almost as soon as it could. But for most of Earth history, it has remained microscopic. Tiny, kind of like the microbes on our body, right? Microscopic. It wasn't until relatively recently that life found a way to get big, to get multicellular, to have more than one cell involved. But we still learned a whole lot. It wasn't like life stagnated for 2 billion years. It was doing all kinds of amazing things. For one thing, those bacteria learned how to grab sunlight and produce oxygen as a byproduct. So they changed the atmosphere. They created this oxygen for us to breathe. If life hadn't been here, we wouldn't have this oxygen-rich atmosphere that we're enjoying breathing right this moment. And this plant is descended. This is a type of fern. It's a beautiful fern. I just learned this today. Sarah was telling me it's a whisk fern. This plant is directly descended from those bacteria that learned how to capture sunlight and do this thing that scientists like to call photosynthesis. And so this forms the basis of all these ecosystems, whether it's in the ocean or on land. We have to have these organisms that are able to capture sunlight. Now, another whole branch of life became complex. The kind of thing that Warren loves to study, what we call invertebrates, animals without backbones, including this Dobson fly, once again is a direct descendant of animals that once lived in the ocean. This insect and all the insects here are descended from animals that once lived in the ocean. It's an amazing thing. So these animals were some of the first, the ancestors of these animals were some of the first to come out on land. So all life was in the ocean, and then some things started to show up on land. The plants came first, actually the fungus were probably first, then you get plants, and then you get animals that ultimately included things like, or became things like insects. So this animal is directly descended from those first immigrants that came from the ocean onto the land. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, there is these animals that showed up around 500 million years ago, and they had backbones like you do. You can take your finger and run it down your back, and that's your backbone, your spine. And this fish has one of those too, all in the same family. And this fish was one of these animals. Once again, its ancestors were bacteria, but it showed up and it lived only in the oceans. And ultimately, this fish, this lake trout that lives around here, is descended from those same fish that lived in the ocean, or the same backboned animals that lived in the ocean close to 500 million years ago. Now eventually, these animals, or things like them, a branch of them came out onto land. And of course, you know the story. We actually have a beautiful wood turtle we can show you later. We have amphibians here. This is a great place. But eventually, these animals came out on land, and they became amphibians. One line of them became reptiles, ultimately then leading to mammals, like this gray squirrel. And of course, this is our family. We're related to this gray squirrel. We're cousins. In the animal world, this squirrel and I are buddies, right? They're like the same family tree. This is my distant cousin. I know, he's pretty good looking too, right?
Gray hair.
Gray hair. Hey, careful of that. Holy cow. Ow, a little slam. All right. So, all of these animals we now have within us lots of different things. So Carl Sagan, who of course spent most of his life living right around here in Ithaca, Carl Sagan loved to say that we are made of star stuff. I can't do it the same way he does, star stuff. And that's absolutely true, but at some level it's trivial compared to the whole story. You're made of star stuff, but you're also made of earth stuff. You're made of the same stuff that is found in the earth. You're made of bacterial stuff. Even the human cells in your body are mergers of ancient bacteria. You're made of bacterial stuff. You are also made of fish stuff. We've inherited a whole lot of things that fish invented, including things like that backbone and things like that. We are made of amphibian and reptile stuff. We are made of kind of squirrel stuff that mammals lived for millions of years in the shadow of dinosaurs and didn't get much bigger most of the time than about a squirrel. And they even looked a lot like squirrels for a long time. So we share all this within us. Now, when we tell that story, it's easy to sort of say it's all about us, right? Everything we see around us, we can sort of stand here proudly and go, yeah, this is all for us, right? Not true. So let's take the distance between that tree stump and this bell. If the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and we mark this as the origin of the Earth 4.5 billion years ago, life shows up at about 4 billion years ago. It stays microscopic for over 2 billion years, somewhere in here, Then it starts to get complex, and you get these backboned animals forming, and all kinds of things. The Devonian rocks that were deposited here were deposited about here. Dinosaurs show up about here, and they go extinct here. Humans are here in a duration that is thinner than this bark. Okay? So you can make the argument that all of this stuff happened just so that this bark could exist. I would take a different view, right? But the amazing thing is that we are not the only thing around today, because we've just been talking about the fact that this place has all the elements of the Earth story. You're covered in bacteria, so is everything around here. So that bacteria is still here. We have these invertebrates, things like those insects. We have fishes, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and then we have these animals, birds, and this is another whole branch of the vertebrate or backbone family tree. And I was talking about this with the kids yesterday. Where do birds come from? They come from dinosaurs. This is a dinosaur. It's an owl, it's a bird, and every single bird alive today is a dinosaur. This thing traces its roots back to an animal that looks a whole lot like Velociraptor. Now, you think about that for a sec, and this owl, this great horned owl, is like a portal back into the time, millions of years, because it's a direct descendant from those dinosaurs. So there's actually more dinosaurs around today than mammals, which is something that, you know, you still have to sort of shake yourself to think about, but is absolutely true. So nature didn't make this whole planet just for humans. There's a dinosaur right there, Colin. Nature didn't make it all just for humans. We're part of this interacting whole, and we always have been. Ever since nature first got going, it's been this interaction of big wholes. You know, you've got the plants grabbing the energy of the sun, you've got other things consuming that energy, and you've got other things consuming those animals. And if you think about it, there's way more plants, way more greenery than there is animals. There's way more plant eaters than there is meat eaters. So you find a lot fewer mice than you do owls, and you find a lot more mice than owls, and you find a lot more grass and other plants than you do mice and other mammals. And that's because the energy of the sun, as it goes from plants to plant eaters to carnivores to big carnivores that eat the other carnivores, a lot of energy is just lost as heat. So that's why there's so few predators at the top of the pyramid and lots of plants at the bottom. And that in some ways even reflects the evolutionary origin of things. So I just want to wrap up by saying that you, whether you know it or not, whether you think about it or not, you are deeply connected to this place right now. You're deeply connected through ecology, how everything is connected, and you're deeply connected through evolution, that everything, it's all relatives, as they say, right? Everything is related to everything else. And that's kind of an awe-inspiring thing to think about. So, as you are walking around today on your nature walks, I would like you to put on those goggles, not the parts goggles, but the holes goggles, and start to see and feel this place in a different way. Because everything is here to interact with everything else. And it's kind of an amazing thing. And it's so complex and so wondrous that we're just beginning to really understand how it all works, both from the ecology side and the evolution side. So all you kids who think you might want to be scientists when you grow up, Alex has got this smile on her face. All you kids that think you might want to be scientists, there are so many things yet to discover. Don't believe it when you go through those books, those textbooks and stuff. It makes it sound like we figured it all out. It's all a lie. We haven't figured it all out at all. We're just beginning to figure it out. And there are many amazing things for you to discover if you want to. Even right here in this nature center, there's still lots of things that we just don't understand. So with that, I just want to thank you all very much for listening to my talk about things today and things through time. And I am happy to answer any questions. And there is this wonderful little girl here who's had her hand up the entire time, desperate to ask me a question. So we're going to start right here. What's your question?
Owls have really big eyes so that they can see better at night.
Owls have really big eyes so they can see better at night. Thank you. And why do they need to see better at night?
So that they can find their food.
And what is their food? What is the owl's food?
Little critters that live on the ground.
Little critters that live on the ground. And what do those critters eat?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Plants and stuff like that. So once again, even just you making that, why do owls have big eyes? Yes, they're active at night and they're night predators, but everything is intertwined. So you can pull on any strand in this place and tell an amazing story with it. Other questions? Oh, right back here. Nice and loud.
What is the owl's favorite food?
What is the owl's favorite food? I'm going to say rodents, little mammals, our cousins, those distant cousins. The owls love to eat our cousins, the little rodents. Yes?
What dinosaur did you discover first?
What dinosaur did I discover first? So I am a dinosaur paleontologist, and the first dinosaur that I named and was involved in discovering was a horned dinosaur, a relative of Triceratops, and we called it Ineosaurus, and it's like I-ne-osaurus, and we called it that because I-ne is the Blackfoot Indian word for buffalo, and the name means buffalo lizard, and these things were wandering around in giant herds in western North America 75 million years ago, just like bison did much more recently. So thank you for asking that question. Way in the back. Owls can turn their head all the way around. It's not quite all the way. If they actually do 360, they're going to die. It's not going to happen. But they can go a lot of the way around. You're exactly right. And they have amazing hearing, too. So you are spot on. Way more than us. If you try and turn your head around, I'm kind of old, too, and it doesn't go very far. But it's a lot tougher. Owls are way better. Yes?
What is your favorite dinosaur that you discovered?
What is my favorite dinosaur that I discovered? It's an animal with 15 horns on its head, another relative of Triceratops called Cosmoceratops, and we just named it a few years ago. It's from Utah, southern Utah. Thank you for asking. And the head alone is between 5 and 6 feet long, just the head. Questions? You have a question?
What's your least favorite dinosaur?
What's my least favorite dinosaur? See, I like that. I'm going to have to say that my least favorite dinosaur is Barney. I'm sorry about that, but no offense, but Barney really scares the stuff out of me, and I just kind of, there's something about Barney that's really creepy. So anyway, thank you for asking that. Any other questions? Yes?
Dinosaur. Big T-Rex.
What's that?
T-Rex.
What about T-Rex? Is that your favorite? Yeah, we do this. We did this yesterday too. How many kids here think T-Rex is their favorite dinosaur? Put your hands up. Yeah, a whole bunch of them. It's kind of an odd thing. I've never quite understood why kids love these giant terror, prehistoric monsters, but they do. It's pretty much ubiquitous. Any other questions? Do you have a question?
Who is the dinosaur your least favorite dinosaur?
He says, "Who's my least favorite dinosaur?" How old are you right now?
7.
7. So you're a little bit young. Barney was this dinosaur that was on TV with a very big stomach and green and just ask your mom about it. It's okay. Hard to explain. Yes?
Favorite dinosaur is Ankylosaurus.
Your favorite dinosaur is Ankylosaurus. How many grown-ups know what Ankylosaurus is? There you go. There's a few. That's pretty good. Yeah. They're like tanks, those Ankylosaurs. They're pretty cool. One more. Should we do a couple more? Do you have a question?
Yeah. What's your favorite thing being a scientist?
What is my favorite thing being a scientist? Wow. That's a great question. Warren and I went for breakfast this morning. We were sitting at a bagel place in Ithaca. We were just throwing around ideas. And I think my favorite thing about being a scientist is just having the ability to talk with people like Warren and bounce ideas around that may just stretch our understanding of the world in ways that nobody has ever considered before. And it's that thing. It's so inspiring. Like finding dinosaurs is amazing. You can be walking in the Badlands and it's hot and you're tired and the pack is really heavy, but you never know when you're going to walk around a corner and find something that is like a prehistoric Picasso, something no one's ever seen before, brand new to the world. And that's what keeps you going when you're out there. But when I'm not out in the field, the thing I love about being a scientist is playing with ideas and thinking about putting things together that no one's ever done before. And that to me is really exciting. And there's so much to do with science pushing out the edges. So if you want to be a scientist, you can do that too and push out all these ideas yourself. I promise. All right, one more. You get to have, so make it a good question here.
How many dinosaurs have you discovered?
How many dinosaurs have I discovered? Wow. People think dinosaurs are really rare, and at some level they're not as common as the fossils of shelled creatures that you find around here, not by any stretch. But dinosaurs are found on every continent. So I've had the fortune of working in countries, different places around the world. We find new dinosaurs wherever we go. I've been involved in naming more than a dozen different new dinosaurs, and we have a bunch more that we've discovered that we're still naming. And if you ask me, people have said, I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, and people say, how many fossils have you found? And it makes me think, gee, I guess I should have kept track, you know? But, you know, even working on animals with backbones that are way less common than the invertebrates, I can honestly say that I found thousands and thousands and thousands of fossils. There's sometimes walking around a day where you can't walk 5 minutes without picking up some other new fossil. So there's still lots and lots of them out there. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up there and let you get to cupcakes. Thank Dr. Scott.